Welcome back to Thumbs Up Cubing. Today we're going to be comparing the competition results in every single event and every U.S. state. So basically what I did is I went on to cubingusa.org to find all of my statistics by state. Then I averaged the podium, so I averaged the top 3 results for the average for each event and each state. And then I made a map so you guys can visualize how good each state and how good each region is. If you want to see where I got my results and the spreadsheet that I made with all the statistics, the links will be down below. Before we start, there's a couple things I want to go over. First, don't be offended if your state doesn't do well. All I did was run the numbers of the statistics and the results that were on cubingusa.org. Second, there will be no DC or no territories because they just don't have any results according to cubingusa.org. For those of you watching in the far future, these statistics were taken from the quarantine period that the WCA had from around April to June in 2020. This took a lot of work and I'm super excited, so let's get straight into it. Alright, so the first map that we have is the number of 3x3ers in every state, so I consider this to be a good control for the amount of cubers. So first let me explain the key. So red is 1 through 10, orange is 11 through 20, yellow is 21 through 30, green is 31 through 40, and blue is 41 through 50. Of course, if you want all the numbers, you can check the link in the description. Now, as you can see, there's 19 red and only 1 orange, and that is because there are 19 states that had over 100 people who did 3x3, and Cubing USA only goes up to 100, so I can assume that some states have more than 100. So let's go ahead and get started with the first map, which is of 3x3. Before we get started, I would please ask you to put your predictions for each event in each state in the comment section below, and I'd like to remind you that if there's a certain event that you want to see, the timestamps for each event will be in the description. So starting off with 3x3, so you may notice that in this map and the past map, in every single map except for the final rankings, Alaska is not colored in, and this is because Alaska does not have any cubers. So the top 3 for 3x3 are Washington, Ohio, and California being number 1, and the bottom 3 are New Mexico, Delaware, and as I said, Alaska being last. So the average is around 8, which kind of makes sense. There are a lot of 7s and a lot of 9s though. And it's kind of interesting because you can see it kind of gets more dense with good states as you go east, I guess. As you can see, there's pretty much all of the orange states and most of the red states are on the eastern side, either the East Coast or the Midwest. But you do have the few outliers in Texas, California, and Washington, and this will be a trend throughout the rest of the events. So let's move on to 2x2. So taking a look at 2x2, our top 3 states are Minnesota, New York, and Ohio being the number 1 state. And our bottom 3 are Wyoming, Delaware, and of course Alaska. So the average state is around 2.5. There are several 1s and a lot of 3s as well. I think more 3s. But there are a lot of very good states in 2x2 as you can see. The outlier states from last time are still outliers, but less such. So you can see Washington, California, and Texas. California and Texas were downgraded to the 2nd level. But you do have a few more states near the east, including Minnesota, bumping up to top 10. And I think just overall 2x2 is a bit more spread out with how good they are. So let's move on to 4x4. So for 4x4, our top 3 states are New Jersey, Washington, and California being number 1. And our bottom 3 are Wyoming, Delaware, and Alaska. So Delaware actually only has 2 people who compete in 4x4 or have average results. But that is not the reason they're last. They're last because their average is the lowest average. But even if a state has 1 result, if it's the best result, that will be the highest state, and you will see that later on from one state, which is kind of interesting. But taking a look at this map, California and Texas are back in the top 10, and the East Coast is just kind of slacking a little bit more, because you got Colorado, who is now in the top 20, and it's just a little bit more spread out from the East Coast, but still pretty interesting. So next event is 5x5. So taking a look at 5x5, our top 3 states are New Jersey, Washington, and California at number 1. And our bottom 3 states are Wyoming, Mississippi, and Alaska. So as you see, Delaware bumped up 1 spot, so they're not in the bottom 3. They're at number 47, so good for them. This map is very similar to 4x4, as you saw the colors change right there. Not too much to talk about. There is significantly more range, I think, with this, because the range is from 49 to 139 as opposed to like 26 to 109. So, and that's the seconds conversion. I messed it up there, but basically there's a lot more range in 5x5. So we'll go ahead and see if 6x6 is that different. There are similar events, so I would expect them not to be too different, but let's go ahead and compare them. So looking at 6x6 here, there are only 3 states that are under 140, and those states would be New Jersey, Washington, and California. Actually, Washington is the number 1 state here. And then the bottom 3 are actually the bottom 4, because we have 3 states tied for the worst result, which would be New Mexico, Delaware, and Wyoming. They all have 443s. And of course, Alaska doesn't have any results. So this map, I think, had a little bit more variance with 5x5 than 4x4 did with 5x5. A few states switched around there. The rankings are generally the same, and you're going to see the states generally in the same areas. But it's pretty much similar, and there were a few differences, but it's mostly the same, so not too much to talk about here. Let's go ahead and move on to 7x7. There is something fun to talk about there. So for 7x7, I'm actually going to start with the bottom 3. So the bottom 3 are New Hampshire, Wyoming, and Alaska at the last spot. And I want to start at bottom 3 because top 3 is kind of interesting. We have Washington and California at 3 and 2, like expected. And the number 1 state is actually Delaware. So if you go back to 6x6, and then look at the map changing to 7x7, you can see that Delaware actually changed from blue to red, because Delaware has 1 average result, and it is a 209.47, and that is actually beating California by about 11 seconds. So that is pretty impressive. We also have Mississippi being a state that did not get a result, so my bad. It's actually Wyoming, Mississippi, and Alaska for the bottom 3 states. So if you look at, like, let's say you're looking at one state that you're in, most of them kind of went down. There were a few that went up, but when I was looking at the colors change, I mostly just noticed states going down. So that is it for the big cubes, and let's go ahead and move on to 3 blind. So for 3 blind, we only have 33 states with results, so 17 states do not have results. So I will not be going over the bottom 3 because there are 17 states that are all on the bottom. You can check them out on the map there. And we also have Texas at number 1, California number 2, and Washington at number 3 overall. So the times in 3 blind are also varying a lot. We have Texas at averaging 22.2, which is insane. It's a lot of 3 style. And then we have the worst state with results, which is Idaho, which has, let me do the calculation here, 550. So because I have them all in seconds. So that is like around my average. So there is a much greater variance in these states, and that means that the states that are good, like the states that are sub 1, which is about a little over 10 here, are very, very highly ranked on the map. So let's go ahead and move on to FMC. So with FMC, like 3 blind, there are a lot of states without results. This time only 10, but I still won't be going over bottom 3 because there are a lot of states without results. And the top 3 for FMC are New York, California, and a new number 1. Cracking the top 3 for the first time is Michigan. So Michigan is now number 1 in FMC. So the worst is 49.83, and the CFOP average, which is the most common method definitely by far, is 55. So there are a lot of people who actually know FMC techniques and not just like me who use CFOP in this. The average for states with results seems to be around 30. There are 3 states that average 30.22, Washington, Maryland, and Wisconsin. So there is much less variance. The range is only around like 24-ish. So much less variance in FMC, and let's go ahead and move on to OH, definitely a much more popular event than the previous 2. So for OH, every state has a result except for Alaska. So our bottom 3 is New Mexico, Wyoming, and before-mentioned Alaska. And our top 3 is New York, New Jersey, and California at number 1. So the average for OH is around 15 or 16, though like the states at number like 25-ish. So that kind of makes sense. The range is between 28 at the worst and 10 at the best, so definitely much smaller, but that makes sense. It's a shorter event. And there are states that have definitely jumped up from where they have been previously in some other rankings, and other states that just aren't doing as well in OH. And it is now time to move on to everyone's favorite WCA event. I can't say this without laughing. Next is clock, guys. I can't say that without laughing. So in clock, there are 4 states without results. They are Vermont, Wyoming, Delaware, and Alaska. And then the top 3 are Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina at number 1. So the South has definitely taken a boost in clock. North Carolina has the only sub 6 like average podium, and the average is around 9, so it's around sub 10. And yeah, just the South has done a little bit better here. As you can see, Washington, California, and especially Texas have taken some hits. And it kind of makes sense that there are less states that do clock, because it's clock. Okay, it's clock. So the next event up here is one that people care more about. It is Megaminx. So for Megaminx, which is a much more normal event than clock, we have Hawaii, Wyoming, and Alaska at the bottom 3, and Ohio, Washington, and New York at the top 3, with New York having the only sub 40 average podium at 39.91. So taking a look at this map, it pretty much follows the trends. We have the Northeast doing well, Midwest doing pretty okay, Washington, California, and Texas doing pretty well. Texas is in the top 10, but still pretty high up there, around to the 15th spot. I can't say exactly, but yeah, it pretty much just makes sense. You got all the states that have been doing okay. It's pretty much following the trends here. So the next event is Pyraminx. So in Pyraminx, our bottom 3 are Wyoming, Delaware, and Alaska. And Wyoming and Delaware don't even have sub 9 averages. So I could probably do okay in those states. And then our top 3 are New York, Ohio, and California as usual. And those are the only ones with sub 2.5 average podiums. So, of course, it makes sense that there would be a much smaller range in Pyraminx, except because Delaware has a 9.84 average podium, the range would not be as small as you think. It's probably around 7-ish, so it's kind of big considering most of the states are between like 5 and 2 averages. And not many states did change that much from Megaminx to Pyraminx. If you took a look at the changes, a lot of the states in the top 10 went down to like the 11 through 20 range, and some of the ones from the 31 to 40 range went up to the 21 to 30 range. So the next event is Skewb. In Skewb, our bottom 3 are Wyoming, Delaware, and Alaska, with Wyoming barely not being above 10. And our top 3 are Virginia, Minnesota, and New York at number 1. And actually our 4 and 5 are Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. So Virginia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, some different states near the top. But generally, it's going to be very similar to Pyraminx because they are very similar events. Taking a look at this map here, we got some red in a few different places, as I mentioned earlier, but a lot of it's very similar. And the oranges are also pretty similar, I think. So, not too much change there. Let's move on to square one, a very different event. Alright, for Squan, our bottom three are Montana, New Mexico, and Alaska. And our top three are New Jersey, Washington, and New York. And so some of the results in this area are actually fairly similar to Skewb, which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting Pyraminx to be more similar to Skewb. But our average podium is around 15-ish. But there are a lot in the 20s and a lot in the low 10, like around 10-ish. So we got some changes, like for example, Oregon cracked top 10. A lot of it's very similar. I think the South did a little bit worse, and like the Midwest, Northeast area got a little bit higher. But there's not too much change there. So the next two events are going to be very, very different results, are going to be 4-blind and 5-blind. So just a quick note, for all of these maps, if there was a state that only had like one average result in that event, I still counted that average result for the whole map. So for a lot of these states that there are only 17 states that have results in 4-blind, but some of them aren't even full averages. There are only 6 states with full averages. That would be California, Oregon, Michigan, Wisconsin, Washington, and North Carolina. That being said, our top 3 are going to be California, Connecticut, and Massachusetts at number 1. And taking a look at the map, it kind of makes sense what states are in top 10 and what states actually have results in general. A few surprises in like Utah and maybe Iowa, maybe Connecticut. Connecticut actually has one person, but very, very good average, sub 5 minutes. So, kind of interesting, but there's not too many states with results, and with 5-blind, there's even less. So there's not too much to talk about with 5-blind, because there are actually only 10 states with results, so that's why they're all red. That being said, the top 3 are California, Iowa, and Michigan, with Iowa and Michigan blowing the rest of them away by over 5 minutes, which makes sense because of the people that are in those states, one of them being Stanley Chappell, who is the current world record holder in both 4-blind and 5-blind. But yeah, not too much to talk about, kind of the same states that we've been seeing for these events. So just a quick note before we get into the final average rankings for every single event combined together so we can get the best states. There is no multi-blind because there are states with multi-blind results, but on cubingusa.org there are no multi-blind results sorted by state, so I could not find those. So that being said, here are the total rankings and the final rankings for all the states. So how I figured these out was I sorted all of the results that are in a spreadsheet, and then I put all the states into rankings in each event, and then I averaged all of the rankings, and then I sorted all of the average rankings from smallest to biggest. So that's how I figured it out, and if a state didn't have a result, then they got 50th. So our top 10 for the final rankings are Minnesota at 10, Pennsylvania is 9, Virginia is 8, Ohio is 7, Michigan 6, New York 5, Florida 4, New Jersey 3, Washington 2, and California is at 1. So California was in the top 10 in every event except the stupidly fast event, which is 2x2, and the dumb event, which is not my opinion, it's dumb, but lots of people think it's dumb, clock. And the bottom 3 were Montana, Wyoming, and Alaska, so sorry, Alaska, you have no cubers. So a lot of states did not have 4 and 5-blind results, especially 5-blind. There were only 10 states, like I mentioned earlier. But New Jersey actually got third place out of all of this, and they did not have any 4 and 5-blind results. So your state can be really good at a lot of events, even if they don't have 4 and 5-blind results. They still can be really hard to win in. So yeah, it's just really interesting to look at this map and to see where the cubers are. So go ahead and take some time to find your state's ranking on this map. And if you want more details about your state's ranking, check the link in the description. It has the spreadsheet that I made where I got all these numbers from. If you watched the video all the way through, I thank you so much for watching this video. It took me a lot of effort and a lot of time, and it was super fun to make. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell button, like this video, follow me on Instagram at thumbsupcubing, join the Discord server, share this video with all your friends, and comment whether your predictions were right or not. Thank you for watching.